Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon all. Today we will a presentation about social linguistics and we are last group. Before we start presentation, let's say basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, now let's my introduce my group members. Members group are Fatihah Rizky Sabrina, Dwi Prasojo, Afika Hani Amalia, and Cantika Aulia Maula Fatu. Definition: P. Truthkill 1974 is 32. Sociolinguistic is that part of linguistics which is concerned with language as a social and cultural phenomenon. It investigates the field of language and society and has close connection with the social sciences, especially social psychology, anthropology, human geography, and sociology. Hudson 1996 P4 Sociolinguistic Micro-sociolinguistic is the study of language in relation to society. Sociology of language or macro-sociolinguistic is the study of society in relation to language. There are several possible relationships between language and society. 1. Society structure may either influence or determine linguistic structure and or behavior. 2. Linguistic structure and or behavior may either influence or determine social structure. 3. Language and society may influence each other. 4. There is no relationship at all between linguistic structure and social structure and that it is independent of the other. Kind of linguistic. Micro-sociolinguistic investigate how social structure influences the way people talk and how language varieties and patterns of the correlate with social attributes such as class, sex, and age. Macro-sociolinguistic studies what society do with their language, that is, attitude and achievement that count for the functional distribution of speech formed in society, language shape, maintenance, and the replacement, the delimitation and interaction of speech communities. Language variation focus on users. There are 4 language variations that are based on its users. 1. Dialect. 2. Dialect. 3. Social dialect. 4. Temporal dialect. Idiolect. Idiolect is the language variation that is individual in nature. Everyone has his own language variation or his own idiolect. This idiolect variation is concerning with the color of voice, choice of words, language style, sentence order. The colors of voice is most dominant aspect in language variation because we can recognize someone just by listening to voice without seeing the person.
Dialect. According to Spolsky, dialect is something that concerns variation which are located regionally or socially. According to Chair and Agustina, dialect also means the language variation that comes from a group of users that are relative in numbers, living in one particular place, region, or area. Since dialect is based on the place, region, or area where the users live, it is usually called as area dialect, regional dialect, or geography dialect. The users of dialect have certain features that mark them as people who have the same dialect, although they have their own idiolect. People who use Japanese with dialect of Semarang have their own particular features that are different from others who have the dialect of Surabaya. but they can communicate well each other because those dialects are included in the same language, that is Javanese. The definition mentioned by Chair and Agustina above is in line with the Spolky's concluded about regional dialect. He concludes the regional dialects tend to show less differences from their close neighbors and greater difference from distant neighbors. Social dialect. Social dialect means the language variation that is concerning with the social status and class. This language variation is usually the most spoken language variation and most time consuming to talk about, since this variation is concerning with all personal problems of the users, such as age, gender, occupation, level of royalty, economic, social status, social class, and etc. According to Holmes, social dialect are the language that reflects the groupings of people that based on similar social and economic factors. Holmes also states that a person's dialect reflects his social background, which can be found the complication of social dialect in Java and the ways used by Javanese speakers to show their social background. In Javanese, a particular social dialect can be defined as a particular combination of style or levels that has its distinctive patterns of vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. In Javanese, every time a Javanese person talks to a different person, he has to choose the right words and pronunciation because almost every word is different and they fit together in patterns or levels. A well-educated Javanese who comes from a rich family usually use 5 different levels of language. According to Marjohan, the social relationship that related to status and familiarity between the Javanese speakers and the listeners has to be marked. The status depends on wealth, nobility, education, occupation, age, kinship, and etc. For example, in Javanese, the word for house has 3 forms that bear status meaning. They are oma, griot, and dalam. In accordance with the social dialect, there are some other language variations that people usually call as acrolect, basilect, vulgar, slang, colloquial, jargon, argot, and cant. The description of this particular language variation are in the following. First, acrolect. This is the social language variation that is considered to be higher or more prestigious than other social language variation. For example, the French with the dialect of city of Paris is considered to be in the higher level than other French dialects. Second, basilect. It refers to the social language variation that is considered to be lower or less prestigious than other social language variation. For example, the English used by cowboys and miners can be classified into basilect. Third, vulgar. This means the social language variation that contains features that are used by people that are less educated or even uneducated. Language in Europe that exist from the Roman age up to Middle Age can be classified into vulgar language, since the intellectual group of people of this age use Latin in conducting all of their activities.
For slang, it refers to the non-standard words. They are known and used by a certain group of people. For example, a group of teenagers, a group of college students, and a group of jazz players. Since every group has its own slang words, there are many kinds of slang that can be found. Slang is usually quite arbitrarily. For example, the word money has some slang words, such as cabbage and duff. Sometimes slang words are more alive, more expressive than the standard word. For example, the slang word of cemetery is boneyard, the slang word of quack is pencil pusher, and the slang word for women who like men only because of their money are money maid and gold digger. 5. Colloquial. It means the social language variation used in daily conversation. It means the language used in speaking and not in writing. The term colloquial is derived from the word colloquium, meaning conversation. The example of colloquial in spoken English are don't for the words do not, I'd for the word I would or I had, will for we will, pretty for very, funny for peculiar, and stuck in for belief. Here are other examples of colloquial expression in English with their formal meanings. Join up for enlist, put up with for tolerate, know how for technical skill, the law for a policeman, outside for accept, unnatural for one who is naturally expert. 6. Jargon. According to Spolsky, it's in group variety which serve not only the label new and needed concept but also to create bonds among the members of a certain group and enforce boundaries for people outside the group. Hacking and surfing the net are phrases that don't have obvious meaning to people who are not following the computer revolution, and sticky wicket and hit for a six are understood by people who play cricket. Jargon also refers to the words that are known and used by a certain group of people, which usually concern with a certain field of occupation. We can also say that jargon is the technical language for a particular profession. Usually, it's quite easy to find the meaning of a jargon without using a special dictionary. We can see an example of jargon in the production of a motion picture. When the director wants to stop a cut of an actor, he will say cut and not stop. Other examples of jargon are the terms used by sailors who use the term starboard side to refer to the right side of a boat or ship, and port side to refer to the left side of a boat or ship. 7. Argot. The means the social variation that are limited to certain profession only and secretly in nature by using special vocabulary. In the grim world of thieves and pickpocketers, people in it use the term like glasses for police, leaves for money. 8. Can. According to Agustina, it means the certain social variation that it used to show poverty that is usually used by beggars, just like the expression the can of beggars, which means the language of beggars. Spolsky has another opinion about the definition of cant. According to him, cant is the jargon used by thieves and underworld, which are used to make it hard for the outside to understand their conversation. However, cant is not limited to underworld only because it can also be found in other areas of occupation such as the Jewish horse. In Alsace, we have used a great number of Hebrew terms for numbers and part of a horse to keep their language secret. Temporal dialect. Temporal dialect means the language variation that is used by a certain social group in particular time. For example, the language variation can be seen in the development of English. According to Widarso, the development of English had begun from the Old English in the year of 600 to 1100. The Middle English in the year of 1100 to 1450. The early modern English in the year of 1450 to 1700 until the modern English in the year of 1700.
Register. For the term register, according to Holmes, it refers to the language of groups of people with common interests or jobs, or the language used in situations associated with such groups. The examples of different registers can be seen in the language used by journalists, legalists, auctioneers, race scholars, sports commentators, airline pilots, criminals, financiers, politicians, disc jockeys, and also the language used in the courtroom and the classroom. One example mentioned by Holmes in her book, The Language Used by People Who Describe a Sporting Event, which can be distinguished easily from language used in other contexts, especially in the vocabulary. In cricket, people describe positions by using terms like silly middle, square leg, the covers, and gully, and describe deliveries by using terms like off break, googly, and leg break. Application in language teaching. Diglossia. In linguistics, diglossia refers to a situation in which two dialects or languages are used by a single language community. In addition to the community's everyday or vernacular language variety, labeled L or low variety, a second, highly codified variety labeled H or high is used in certain situations such as literature, formal education, or other specific settings but not used for ordinary conversation. Post 1959, research on diglossia has concentrated on a number of variables and important questions: function, prestige, literary heritage, acquisition, standardization, stability, grammar, lexicon, phonology, the difference between diglossia and standard with dialects, extent of distribution in space, time, and in various language families, and finally, what engenders diglossia and what conditions favor its development. First, function. The functional differentiation of discrepant varieties in a diglossia is fundamental, thus distinguishing it from bilingualism. H and L are used for different purposes, and native speakers of the community would find it odd if anyone used H in an L domain or L in an H domain. Second, prestige. In most diglossias examined, H was more highly valued than was L. The H variety is that of great literature, canonical religious texts, ancient poetry, of public speaking, of pomp and circumstance. The L variety is felt to be less worthy, corrupt, broken, vulgar, undignified, and etc. Third, literary heritage. In most diglossic languages, the literature is all in H variety. No written use of L exists except for dialect, poetry, advertising, or low-restricted genres. In most diglossic languages, the H variety is thought to be the language. The L variety is sometimes denied to exist or is claimed to be only spoken by lesser mortals. In some traditions, L variety will be used to show certain characters are rustic, comical, uneducated, and etc. Fourth, acquisition. L variety is the variety learned first. It is the mother tongue, the language of the home. Each variety is acquired through schooling, where linguists would therefore insist that the L variety is primary, native scholars see only the age variety as the language. Fifth, standardization. Age is strictly standardized. Grammars, dictionaries, canonical texts, and etc. Except for it, written by native grammarians. L is rarely standardized in the traditional sense, or if grammars exist, are written by outsiders. 6. Stability. Diglossias are generally stable, persisting for centuries or even millennia. Occasionally, L varieties gain domains and displace the H variety, but H only displaces L if H is the mother tongue of an elite, usually in a neighboring polity. 7. Grammar. The grammars of H are more complex than the grammars of L variety. They have more complex tense systems, gender systems, agreement, syntax, and L variety. 8. Lexicon. Lexicon is often somewhat short, but generally there is differentiation. H has vocabulary that L lacks, and vice versa. 9th. Phonology. Two kinds of systems are discussed. One is where H and L share the same phonological elements, but H may have more complicated morphophonemics, or H is a special subset of the L variety inventory, but speakers often fail to keep the two systems separate. Vernacular. A vernacular refers to the language or dialect that is spoken by people that are inhabiting a particular country or region. The vernacular is typically the native language, normally spoken informally rather than written, and seen as of lower status than more codified forms. It may vary from more prestigious speech varieties in different ways, in that the vernacular can be a distinct stylistic register, a regional dialect, a sociolect, or an independent language. Vernacular is a term for a type of speech variety generally used to refer to a local language or dialect, as distinct from what is seen as a standard language. The vernacular is contrasted with higher prestige forms of language, such as national, literary, liturgical, or scientific idiom, or a lingua franca used to facilitate communication across a large area.
Okay, that's our material presentation today. If you still confused or maybe there something to answer, please put on the discussion, and sorry if there are mistaken for presentation today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.